What did you think about today?
Well, I think Comey made a very significant statement today. He said he believed the Constitution authorizes the president to tell the director of the FBI who to investigate, who not to investigate, who to prosecute, who not to prosecute. He's 100% right about that constitutional analysis. I've been making this point now for weeks, and virtually everybody has disagreed with me. Today, Comey agreed with me. And therefore, if that's right, it really doesn't matter whether it was a request, a hope. The president has the authority to tell the director of the FBI to stop an investigation. He also has the authority to pardon Flynn and stop the investigation. Jefferson did this, Lincoln did this, Kennedy did this, Roosevelt did this, and other presidents have done it. President Bush I pardoned Caspar Weinberger during an investigation in which Weinberger might very well have testified against Bush. In fact, the special prosecutor in that case, Walsh, called it a cover-up. And yet nobody suggested at that point obstruction of justice. So we have to get obstruction of justice off the table. The second important point I get out of this was that it now turns out Comey is a chicken who's afraid of seagulls. I mean, the idea that he would not tell the press about these memos and he would have some law professor serve as a surrogate to leak information. The last person in the world who should be leaking information is the director of the FBI. And third, I think that Comey gave an explanation for why he was fired because of the Russian thing. Remember that President Trump 3 times said to him, I want you to continue the investigation. I want you to get it out. Get it out that I'm not a subject of the investigation. He repeatedly said, get it out. Comey didn't do it. So I think Comey was fired because he refused to accept a presidential order to get out the information publicly that he was not a subject of the investigation. That was a proper request from the president. You can't have obstruction of justice when the president didn't commit a crime. Nixon committed crimes. He told his underlings to lie to the FBI. He arranged for hush money to be paid to witnesses. None of that is alleged against President Trump.
All right, let me go to you, Ari. Same question. What do you think about today?
Well, what was most significant was that Jim Comey, unlike many other participants in this drama, was willing to come out under his own name, under oath, and testify. He also has some background materials. I didn't find it all that notable whether he used other people to distribute things. A lot of senior officials in Washington are accustomed to having aides and assistants and consiglieres, so to speak. But what was most significant was his view, which he says was backed up by other officials at the FBI, that this effort to stop the Flynn investigation was problematic, so much so that they took all these extra steps to try to deal with it. Reading from Director Comey, because this is the new factual information that's interesting, he says they were as shocked and troubled as I was, referring to other FBI officials. They were all experienced people who'd never experienced such a thing, so they were very concerned, and the conversation turned to what do we do with this information. He went on to say that he believes the special counsel will look at the totality of this and Donald Trump's words, as well as the firing, in the context of any investigation that could include obstruction. It's certainly too early to know where the special counsel investigation leads. That is bad in some sense for the White House because you have to see what happens. It's also good in some sense for the White House because it could ultimately lead nowhere and vindicate them. I think anyone who thinks they have a handle on where that investigation is going to lead in 6 or 12 months has a better crystal ball than I do.
Well, I have a pretty good crystal ball because I listened to Comey. If Comey is right that the president has complete constitutional authority to tell a director of the FBI to end an investigation, look, it would be wrong to do it. It would be immoral. It would be politically wrong. But if he has the constitutional authority to do it, you don't need a crystal ball to conclude that any reasonable prosecutor will conclude what Comey concluded, that no crime was committed. The reason Comey didn't go to the Justice Department was not because there was recusal, not because there wasn't a permanent deputy attorney general, but because he knew there wasn't a crime. And you don't go to prosecutors to report conduct that's wrong or in violation of Justice Department rules. You go to prosecutors if you believe a crime was committed. Comey didn't believe a crime was committed then. I don't think he believes a crime was committed.
That's just not what the record states. I mean, it may or may not be that crimes were committed, and it may or may not be that pardons would be issued, and the Constitution does give a broad pardon power. But the former director did not testify a conclusion about a crime. Indeed, that would also be inappropriate. He is a witness to events that are currently under investigation by the FBI and a special counsel. That is an open process, and it will be up to them, not any individual witness, to ultimately decide whether the factual predicate exists to move forward on charges or not and recommend such to the DOJ.
Forget about factual predicate. The constitutional predicate doesn't exist, no matter what the facts are, unless they can show what Nixon did, bribing witnesses not to testify, telling people to testify falsely. If all they can demonstrate was that the president exercised his proper constitutional authority to fire Comey and to tell him to stop investigating Flynn, there is no constitutional basis. Forget about the facts. No constitutional basis to go forward with an investigation. That's why
I appreciate the recommendation to forget about the facts. I'm not in the business of forgetting about the facts, Professor. The facts matter. The facts matter from a journalistic sense. They matter from a legal sense. You are referencing a constitutional power that does exist, which is ultimately the resolution of the investigation could run into the pardon power. But that doesn't obviate the factual process as it unfolds right now.
And I'm going to give Alan the last word, Ari, because he's our guest here at MSNBC, and then I got to go. Alan, you're going to get the last word.
As a guest.
I think that we should take the issue of obstruction of justice off the table and focus on what we really care about. That is, did the Russians try to influence an election? Did they succeed in influencing an election? Was the Trump campaign involved in that? That's the issue, not whether the president obstructed justice. That's a distraction, and we should take it off the table.
I know I'm just a guest as well, but I would have to throw in there, I would echo what the professor is saying about that search. That's an important search, but that could also unveil crimes. Take the president out of it. It is a crime under federal election law to take a thing of value from a foreigner. If that occurred, whichever campaign, whichever party, that's something that I think people are going to care about.
And I just want to point out there was one lawyer who didn't have to have the last word. I wasn't even in this discussion. Anyway, thank you both. Thank you both.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.